so when that tough runner form was to start. You had BLG still on their heels. IG, I want to recall, was still up there as well, slightly forward towards the end.
Yeah.
We were able to hold on to that as we are here into picks and bans for game number 3. Let's see how things shake down as Nico and Bessa and Kalista will join the bench immediately. Don't expect to see those ones come through. Maybe even for the rest of the series, but certainly until game 5, I almost say for the Nico and the Kalista especially.
Yeah, Kalista wasn't on the ban bench for game 1. Nico has been here throughout, and Bessa, I think, joined on game 2. So we've had nice little additions through these through the series, and looking at the bans away with Yone being picked up, Kalista being taken away, it's very sort of hallmark picks. I mean, Peyz's Kalista has had several pop-off performances in the back half of this season alone. The amount of times that Yone, just in general, has gone absolutely nuclear in the LPL is maybe a little bit too high. And now we get to see that this likely Gwen Rumble trade comes through, and if not, we get the extended first pick of, you would expect to see Rumble picked up here.
This is why, like, casting with another, like, you know, typically in slot color is fun. I just get to sit here and go, yeah, like,
Sorry.
you're just very correct. No, not a problem, mate. I'm happy to cruise for a sec. I mean, there's the Rumble trade. It did seem like a given. Ooh, Jace. Okay, so that obviously opens up some Sejuani paths for JDG if they want to go down that route. Or Weibo, of course, alternatively could snap it up themselves, and Tian, I think we all know, would be fairly comfortable on the champ.
Yeah. Signs point towards our junglers being comfortable on Sejuani.
On Sejuani.
Yeah. We've had a few years.
The trade as well, like Maokai, right?
Okay. They have just locked in Nidalee.
Yeah.
to go
Nidalee,
top lane, probably.
Yeah, probably Nidalee. Well, if they do that, then it's definitely locked in top.
Okay. I mean, bated breath at this point.
I would hate Nidalee jungle, though. I'm not a really big fan of it overall. Don't get me wrong, there's definitely spaces where I think it can be fine, but blind circumstances are just, not all there for it. It's like KT do it a lot over in the LCK, and peace and love to Cuz. I mean, to be fair, he's got decent hands at times. Sometimes he remembers once upon a time, he still is a pretty individually blessed player. As away from the LCK, is it going to be Sejuani with Nidalee there? Not for now. Want to match the AD first? No! Hot swap over to Azir. So, given how late that swap was, typically Roodood, that means that Jhin is going to end up being the third pick here. And they're going to forego jungle. Just because of how late that swap was. Usually means teams are talking, right? And they go, oh wait, no, actually, give us that instead. They land on the Poppy eventually. Okay. So flexible, of course, for Shun or missing, but expectation would be that it lands in Shun's hands. We'll have to wait to see the rest of the composition, or if Erha goes something that Poppy is, of course, good into.
Yeah, so the top side locked in here for JDG. They obviously see the misfortune that they're going to be up against. So there's a very real world where that AD carry pool gets pinched by Weibo on this second ban phase, and you know, that Jhin that you talked about that they hovered for so long might just get banned away. And JDG, they're going to have to deal with that and maybe delve a little bit deeper into that AD carry champion pool. Weibo on the flip side, they reveal the flex, right? We've got Nidalee and Skarner locked in. Unless we see some rogue Skarner positioning, it's going to be the Skarner in the jungle. Breathe taking this Nidalee into Arla's Jace. And the misfortune as well locked in is already a very early game geared composition.
Senna. Very interesting call out there. Of course, we are still on 25-10, I want to imagine. I mean, I guess we're on Sunday. Maybe. I don't know what patch it is, honestly.
We're on 11 at the minute.
Okay, thank you, production, the voice of God. We are on 11.
So this is Farming Center.
So this is
Farming Center has been, has been a pretty big resurgence, I would say, as one of those A-tier AD carries. Not one that gets immediately picked, but will go into most series.
Yeah, and the other one I actually wanted to bring up was the Smolder, but has been very, like, gently love tapped down, no pun intended, with Misfortune being there. Love tapped down in terms of a gentle nerf, honestly, to his armor. But that does make his laning a little bit more difficult, and I think armor is something you'd really like to have. Base armor, of course, into Misfortune, just because of how rough some of those the base damages can be. Jin did get removed away, so that setup AD is gone. Just kind of glancing over the pool here. I mean, does feel a little bit barren for Peyz. I guess we'll talk about this lock-in here for Weibo first, because Skarner does mean that top side will be the Nidalee. Victor and Oriano are taken away from Xiaohu, so does he just go something like Syndra at this point and just kind of call it a day? Does he feel like that's really him? We're not even going to know. We're going to get Rel first.
I mean, that speaks to being either unsure or that they've got something really specific locked away that they need to see the entire comp for to know if it's going to work. But the Rel gets locked in, so they forego support counter pick, which is not
to get too excited. Not to get too excited.
Xerath. Okay.
I mean, it's the old tried and tested, you know, combo here. As are we just gonna get Nami Lucian despite the Rel show here, or will it be missing piloting the Poppy? I mean, I feel like at this point, knowing that it's Skarner on the opposite side, you feel pretty comfortable with Shun to just handshake the tank matchup and play the utility. And it seems we will get that, with this hover indicating that missing will eventually take up a support, whether it's this Leona or otherwise, and it will be. So go on, Xiaohu, give it to us. What have you gone to R5 for? Is it going to be something exciting?
Foregone the support counter pick to allow you this 5th pick. We needed to see the entire draft before you lock this in. Now, Assassins are being hovered and the LeBlanc gets locked in by Xiaohu in game number 3.
All right, LeBlanc. I mean, I know there will be some rather analytical minds first, shall we say, hesitant to see the LeBlanc and think victory is on its way. That said, there isn't really a lot of easy to use point and click against this LeBlanc, right? Shun really has to be in very consistently good positions to deny, you know, kind of frontal poke over walls and such. And the side laning is obviously going to be very, very irritating for the side of JDG to deal with. It's the Nidalee and the LeBlanc, so on that kind of 2-item spike, yes, Azir is a very fearsome side laner. Yes, Jace can certainly hold his own also at 2 items. These other champs are just very mobile and very obnoxious, so if there's not additional CC, and honestly just members in general around to help out, it can be very hard to get through those health bars. And away from those side laners, got the Skarner Misfortune ultimate combo, right? So they can play through 5v5s. We've got plenty of options. JDG, I think, a little bit more locked into traditional ways of playing the game, right? Sort out your side lane waves, come to objectives, scrap it out.
And I think that's going to be really tricky, especially when you already touched on how difficult those side lanes are going to be. There's not a tank in a side lane, which is just going to clear the wave nice and easily. Up against the LeBlanc, up against the Nidalee, it's Jace, it's Azir, it's champions that can quite easily get 100 to 0'd if they are left in the lurch for just 1 second, 1 step, just a bit too far forward, or for 1 frame of time, just a bit too long, as we load onto the Rift now. Game number 3 between JDG and Weibo Gaming.
No, I'll do it for you guys. Jing Dong!
Jayo! You're welcome, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Still one of my most fond well, hard to call it casting memory, but doing stage hosting at MSI in London in 2023. Getting to do that for the Jing Dong fans in the Copper Box Arena.
I remember the Copper Box.
Very lovely. Yeah. Ended up being a really lovely event by the end of it.
I was there as a loud shill and had a miserable time seeing. This is the second time I've mentioned it in as many days. Robo getting bodied.
Yeah, I do remember that. It wasn't particularly pleasant. I mean, shout out to the loud fans, honestly. This feels like a very random tangent, but they were incredibly loud that tournament.
That's true. And
I remember watching on air on my phone thinking, wow, they sound like the entire arena. And then you walk in, it was just like a group of 50 ultras, basically.
Yeah.
Almost entirely traveled all the way from Brazil and likely other parts of the world. to come watch their team compete as 2v2 trades. Likely going to be very heavy. I expect this bottom lane to be very, very aggressive. I'm not going to outright say bloodied, but Misfortune, Lucian, 2 lane bullies individually with melee engaged supports. Expect them to be very back and forth. And,
first LeBlanc game
up here as well.
Yeah, first LeBlanc game, first Nidalee game here of the season for Breed and Xiaohu as level 2s come through down on that bot side. It's Peyz and Missing, able to force Light and Erha back, looking to deny experience as the relentless pursuit goes forward. Now level 2's hit. Erha, you can see, remounting and maybe forcing or threatening with that flash, but not going to go far forward. Shining Strike goes wide and buys that little bit of time. Now for the bot side of JDG to again feel a little bit more safe. Junglers are packed up to this top side, and maybe we're expecting this bot lane to be volatile, but it's not going to be receiving any jungle action on the first clear.
Yeah, and whilst the Xiaohu might be 0-0 on the LeBlanc in this split, hasn't played it, career-wise, just sitting on the 63% win rate overall.
A pretty decent LeBlanc player then, we expect.
Yeah, of course. Xiaohu's been around for a very, very long time.
And it's worth saying as well that LeBlanc got played in our last series as well. AL and Shanks was able to take down WE with this pick in literally the last series. So for both of these sides, we're looking pretty good. And I think that for Weibo, Xiaohu going to be looking to find that same semblance of success. The early flash forced from Scouts as Tian makes an early path into that mid lane. But now Jun sat in the wings waiting. It's warded out and now that contest for the crab might go a different way than it had done previously, and bot lane still continue to skirmish.
Yep, I'm not too surprised about the 2v2 fisticuffs. We will have Shun down here in a moment, but if he does go the faster route, he's going to get spotted on this wall. I think the dive is certainly playable, just Light's just about enough HP to be dove.
Oh, a missed Shattering Strike and a baited cleanse from Peyz here. But look at that mid lane. Xiaohu's already walking. Jun going to reveal his face and just starts off with a little bit of trade onto Erha. Forcing and denying at least one minion. Denies a little bit of XP, but Weibo, they're not going to actually miss out on too much as Tian now is going to be ahead of Jun in terms of pacing. As he's already gone back to a base and moves back out onto the map, can complete his second clear. Maybe Jun actually just operates on the map without that first recall.
Yeah, I think he's going to have to for this little brief window, pick up the Krugs and force the chickens just to keep those camps in faster rotation. Also just potentially prevent Tian from sneaking in and taking especially the chickens, but he's going to back off the Krugs. He just wants to make sure that he gets those items in ASAP. Perhaps just kind of taking a gamble here as Peyz is making his way to the top side. And you can see Missing as well on the minimap. He's opening up through mid. See if he ends up trying to attack Xiaohu. Still hasn't based yet, right? He used his base timer on that roam and then had his base also stopped by Peyz and Missing. So likely going to try and find a reset timer after this wave. Just to try and spend some of that gold, which I'm sorry is sitting on Scout. Got a couple of those damage components sitting there for the extra bit of damage in those trades.
And for me as well, looking at this swap, JDG weren't really in a bad position in either lane. Seemed like they were coming out largely on top of the bot side, and looking at that top lane CS disparity, 4 CS difference. It's not worth calling for that swap unless you've got something particularly planned in your agenda for the next couple of minutes. So double TPs used here, the early game TPs, and it's Weibo who have responded to this teleport or to this swap by JDG by looking for plates on the bot side, and Xiaohu just straight back into that mid lane. We expect him to come out on top of these trades, the Lost Chapter versus just the Amp Tome and Dagger. But JDG adapting as well, sending more people to this mid lane.
Yeah, and this was kind of like back in the day when the Blanc Azir was, believe it or not, folks at home.
Like season 5, right?
Yeah, like for a brief time it was actually meta. A big part of the reason why this matchup was so LeBlanc favored is that Azir can't really lane at like 30, well not 30, they're too low, but kind of 45-50% HP, because once LeBlanc has that Mimic, rotation ultimate back up, that is just straight up lethal, right? And the Azir doesn't really have a meaningful way of stopping that play pattern from happening on repeat. So Scout's gonna have to be careful. Has actually opted towards that fleet. I did miss the overall runes at the very start of the game. I'm curious to know whether or not he's also got, you know, bone playing or second wind.
You would expect to resolve, right? Like something
yeah,
to,
like,
to sustain.
In this lane, like, you know, if you've got fleet, you're all inning on the defensive side, right? Like the only thing you're not doing, well, there's the bone playing, so that gives us our answer. Yeah, you're just basically stopping short of, you know, starting Doran's shield pretty much at that point, but you need the ring for the mana and force that in. That spear felt generous for Breathe.
Yeah, and you know we've had several love taps to Nidalee spear hitbox over the years, but Arla still coming out on the worst end of that exchange. And remember that Breathe on the Nidalee does have access to his own set of heals every sort of 11 to 12 seconds or so, and I think on this AD Nidalee, usually it is Emax first. So you'll go back to having a shorter cooldown on that, having more attack speed, and making sure that you can get through the war of attrition that little bit better. And since that TP down to that bot side, a small advantage has opened up in the top lane as well.
I'd love to talk about the top lane advantage. Did you see what Scout just did, mate?
I didn't. I missed it. What did Scout just do?
Well, just like you missed what he did, he missed the cannon.
Oh,
the tower. No pressure. No pressure as well. Just a complete, like, miss hit.
An unobstructed -1.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is what you hate to see. Well, he's going to try and make up for it by taking some grubs. He gets +30 off of that one. Jun will be annoyed at him for taking some of the gold, and he's actually pivoting up toward this top side.
Oh, wow.
Missing uses Air as a taxi. Scout flashes in, and Light has been left to the wolves. He tries to trade back, but he is going to fall. It's a 2-for-0 and the grubs. And JDG find a nice little fight for themselves.
Really, really nice little fight, right? I mean, they did get all three, I want to say, in the end. Not sure if...
or they stole one, sorry. So Weibo got two.
Yeah, looks like, oh, yeah.
And then Jun sniped one to begin with.
My tired brain couldn't comprehend what the symbol was for the for a second, so I was like, I'm pretty sure, you know, Shun was getting all three, like, you know, he got the first one to Scout, second
Felt
one
like he was going to get them, you know?
Yeah. So,
however,
maybe not as big a win as it should have been. But alas, they still got those 2 kills. One went into Scout's back pocket, which is super important. And honestly, even Shun in a setup like this, getting a kill doesn't feel too bad for the Poppy. If it means that he's going to be a lot more annoying. He's going to get items that give him a little bit more cooldown reduction, right? The Sundered Sky Rush in particular, to really just make him super frustrating bruiser to deal with. And speaking of being a frustrating bruiser to deal with, just yoinked Tia's skull right from underneath Tian's nose.
Yeah, TY for the leash. Shades of game number 2, where it was Weibo walking up, taking the attack on without any real consequence, and you know, maybe the stakes are a little bit lower this time, but he's going to feel quite happy with the fact that he's able to take down that crab, and currently sat at a nice little 1-0 scoreline. Early kills going over to JDG does feel good, but the early couple of grubs for Weibo going to give them the advantage when pushing turrets. A reminder that, you know, the whole identity of Weibo and what we were building up in that pre-show had been that, you know, Weibo may be one of our better teams at navigating these side lanes, in being able to play on the 1-3-1 style that little bit better. Getting a couple of grubs in their back pocket is going to be a pretty big boost for them.
Just really enables any free time they're able to achieve on the side lane, especially because, you know, LeBlanc particularly, because we're not in the Triforce stack Shiv era. Sorry for anyone who just shuddered remembering that. But LeBlanc doesn't necessarily get through towers super fast until, you know, she gets a couple of AP items under her belt, and then the scaling of the autos really kind of kicks in. So the additional grubs early on just kind of help chunk through the overall total health of those towers in those isolated moments. Super important. Nidalee, or Breathe, or rather on the Nidalee, has a lot of attack speed through the Triforce, which will certainly come in sooner or later. Makes her an annoying menace.
So the companion picked up for Xiaohu here. It is, you know, a very heavy pivot towards, or not even a pivot, but just a strong proponent of being that poke threat in the late game, looking to be a bit of an assassin through the early and mid game. And you know, if you can get on top of Scout for just a little bit and find a little bit of damage before a big fight breaks out, that's your real goal here. The LeBlanc play patterns, as you move later on, you swap from being this assassin, and you know, if you get fed, don't get me wrong, you can definitely function as it, but hopping over a wall, QR, land a chain, and that's normally, you know, a good chunk of somebody's health bar that will go down. That said, though, Scout not doing too badly in the poke wars himself, as it's JDG starting up the Dragon, looking to trade this 1-for-1, and Tian on the top side. What does he do with this free time? Well, so far it's looking like he's going to steal away a Gromp, but Arla's playing very safely, very respectfully on that top side as well.
Yeah, doesn't want to give over a kill or any more gold than he has to. Perhaps just learn from that little sequence that happened in game number 2 on the Scion, where he died to Xiaohu from that Talia roam. And there you go. A bunch of XP will be missed. Nice little gold swing here to breathe. And this is when jungle's annoying. You know, like, it's not really impeding you in the sense of, like, ganks being very direct. And, you know, you have to lose a flash. It's like, I just lost a cannon wave and a whole extra wave, and the enemy laner got to basically proxy farm.
Yeah.
And get plates. Like that. Yeah.
And you're looking at that and go, we got Drake, it's worth. And you're praying that that's the actual case, as Tian gets 2 ultis in exchange for the Ixtal's Impact, which, you know, it's a pretty good trade.
Very happy with that. There's no objective coming up by the time those ults come up, though, so I think JDG happy to kind of just take a swing in the dark and see if anything could hit. Catch out Tian there. Maybe you can just kind of go hover Scout after the push, and they are effectively doing that anyway. That play does force out Weibo from the top side of the map, and Scout is going to get a bunch of isolated time here on this top tier 1.
I will say as well, with this game having gone and slowed down, not really, you know, ever picked up in pace outside of those couple of kills to begin with, the scaling for JDG does, you know, feels a bit better for me at least. That you've got this Azir lurking in the backline, you know, notorious late game threat. You've got a good front line in that Poppy. Won't call it an amazing one, but certainly something that can stand in the front. And with the MF as well, not a champion that notoriously does a lot of damage as you move later on into the game. Happy for JDG to try and take this a little bit slower. And with that, Tian is the one that flashes forward. Impale's missing and decides we actually want some action here. Aftershock keeps him alive for a little bit longer, but not long enough. And it's going to be Breathe that picks up the first kill for Weibo.
Yeah, cheeky little pick off that. The objective, Scout not going to elect to hit this top tier 2 here. And Weibo are going to just try their best to ransack some of this bot side jungle. And Rood, we're bordering on LCK territory. Xiaohu. Oh my god. All right, well, I lied.
Are we out of LCK territory? Is this an intentional? Is this one of those intentional jinxes, Jamada, where you say the game's looking a little bit?
I'd love to claim that was my power that time, but that was just straight up like unction movement from Xiaohu. Just fair play. Right?
Straight up, like, what movement?
Unction.
What does unction mean?
Okay,
oh, okay, yeah.
Right,
Okay,
so he's unk.
Yeah.
At the function you get down, you throw down some moves.
Right.
So this is function, or unction movement rather.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
I apologize that I had to have that explained, but I'm sure I'm not the only buddy in the audience who needed it. So I'll hold and we'll take our win where we can get them. As I mean, now looking at how the items are currently being allocated, Scout looks terrifying, for one, because he's got 2 full items on the Azir 15 minutes in. However, Xiaohu has just solo killed Arla in the side lane, so there is strength in this LeBlanc. It's currently not yet being truly harnessed, I don't think, with him being able without being able to deal with Scout. So, curious as to see what the plan for Weibo is moving forward, and if it is just using the Nidalee, who's really the only real part of this game that has a gold lead.
1.7k breathers sat up on Arla, and over a true 1 level lead. I say that like it's the jungle. It's a bad habit of mine. Just because jungle SP is so bad. I'm not gonna elaborate.
Yeah.
Just leave it there. Breathe. It is really gonna be a big part of whether or not Weibo can find pressure on the map, right? Make JDG have to respond to him. And for the time being, Tian is just going to give him the hover, right? And that ward is going to let Tian know he's there. But unfortunately, the Jace E has just about enough range to be able to buffer Tian out of his own little bit of CC.
Yeah, that's a very nice interaction for the Jace to have on his side as Xiaohu hops forward. Chain's going to land, and a quick half HP trade gives Xiaohu a little bit of a leg up, but Scout took the turret. He's just going to go back and recall and has teleport to get back into this fight. With Drake spawning in about 5 seconds time, both teams has 1 Drake apiece. Scout goes back, recalls, doesn't actually pick up anything from his items as he moves into the mid lane, and Missing looks for an engage. Doesn't really seem to have found anything too great, as it's actually Light finding the first kill, and Tian just falls on the back half of this. Peyz dashes out of one distortion, gets caught by the other, and Xiaohu takes JDG on a merry dance as Scout flashes forward, throws soldiers into Narnia, and gives his life for the cause. Breathe goes forward and buys the rest of the space, and now Peyz has to run for the high hills. Breathe with flash up, ready, goes on top of the JDG AD carry, and he's going to get out to safety for now, but a big win for Weibo in mid lane.
A big win for Weibo, but the whiff from Scout was just suboptimal. To be polite to him. Not finding a target there just completely makes that a losing fight for JDG, where Weibo are just up, and they're going to get this dragon as well. So it feels really, really horrible. Scout did a fantastic job, or rather Xiaohu did a fantastic job of pressuring Peyz in that fight too, to really shut his ability down to open up with those 2 items. So all in all, Weibo just do a fantastic job of navigating that exchange.
And it does feel really good for Peyz to have lived the LeBlanc, but also feels really bad that he wasn't actually able to contribute too much to that. I mean, this fight looks really good, to be honest, to start for JDG.
Yeah, it's the stun into the wall. I have to be a little bit critical of Tian, because it feels like he had a monkey's age to really, really just pull the trigger on the Impale. He waited far too long, in my opinion, and by the time he wants to cast it, he's stunned into the wall. And there's the whiff again from Scout. It's not pretty. Not pretty at all, and Erhar as well. Additional bit of zoning there on to Peyz to, again, just stop him from really doing his thing.
And it was a little bit almost emblematic of how Light has been playing, I think, for this game in particular, where he's not really had anything happen to or around him, and the one time that it does, he's just kind of sat there, last hits, get a couple of kills. But Scout flashed in on him there, and Light had flash ready, knew that he was absolutely fine, and sort of T-posing, looking at the Azir that's made a bit of a fluff of things, and now he's going to have to struggle his way through the rest of the next 5 minutes without that flash, as Tian pops his ward down and makes sure that he doesn't get caught out by face checking Missing and June. Can question whether or not the damage would have been there for it, but a little bit of hover onto Scout. Still very strong on this Azir, don't get me wrong, has a 1k lead over his counterpart, has now got those Merc Treads in his back pocket as well to stay a little safer in that side lane. Need to see slightly better performances in those team fights. We've got an Atacon spawning in 10 seconds time. Next Drake's not for 3 minutes, so a little bit of time here for the teams to posture and jockey around the top side.
Yeah, just for the time being. I mean, Scout's items are so cheap as well, right? Like, he's already getting components towards the 3rd item there. I'd guess double tome. A few things it could be, but I'm just going to guess if it's not an O1A item, that ends up being Zhonya's, and he just looked into Zhonya's a bunch of different aspects of not only the poke but the engage available from Weibo to try and make them waste it, or it obviously gives him more proactive play making tools as well once he has that stasis available.
Likely not going to be a proto belt is what I heard from that, and you know, alternator item may be good. Not, yeah, well, the day I see Proto Belt Azir, you know, I'll be very happy. You know, maybe with Proto Belt he would have been able to scoop up Light in that fight. You know,
yes,
he's adapting to.
This is the good thinking.
this is the cooking that we like, for sure.
Yeah.
Horizon Focus, though, finished up for Xiaohu, so again, looking to play at those long ranges, and the way that this functions as well, you know, the Horizon Focus using a certain amount of range before you can get the proc. If you fire the E from LeBlanc and then go back to your distortion, when that chain lands, you actually get that proc of the range and the little bit of vision that it will give you as well. So there is some synergy between LeBlanc and the Horizon Focus, and obviously the CC little portion as well is pretty good, as JDG are actually starting up this Atacon without really any response from Weibo so far. They took a bit of a bad recall timer, and JDG have made the most of it.
It's not the first time we've seen that this series. Team makes a bad macro call, whether it's a bad reset timer, and then boom, the objective is immediately taken. Though I guess last game, in the case of the Atacon, it was kind of leashed. by the end of it, as just putting the positional advantage gained to immediate use, securing this tier 1 in the mid lane.
So not nothing for Weibo, but definitely feels like they came out on the worst end of that trade, I'd say, with getting a mid-tier 1, you'd be quite happy, but losing out on that Thornbound Atacon, it's an everlasting chance now at slightly stronger team fights for JDG, gives them a little bit more potential to reset through a fight once they found that first kill, and all of that experience that they're going to gain as well. Certainly going to boost their stats a little bit quicker than Weibo might have liked, as Weibo do still hold a 1,000 gold lead. It's, again, largely focused around that top lane, but this is currently not the best situation for JDG to sit themselves in, and honestly, they've got a little bit of time still to try and poke out and carve out a window of opportunity, I think, for Weibo, but it's on Weibo still to try and find that lead.
Yeah, no, they have to. They have to really try and extend this. And I mean, playing these 1-3-1 comps, whilst we've been very, very happy to see them be executed well by Weibo, they are still just the more difficult version of League of Legends in, you know, this day and age, where teams are usually, I mean, it'll be half a joke to say it, but like, you know, can manage side lane waves and scenarios well. The objectives are often just so much more important to handle, as Xiaohu is just going to deal a bunch of damage to Arla.
That was just QR. Yep. So imagine a chain on top of that, and you know, that's quite possibly just lethal damage at the minute for the LeBlanc, who's looking pretty darn strong. 4 stacks on that Dark Seal. Sorcerer's Shoes picked up as well. So he's going full pen, adding completely, you know, adding complete damage into whatever kit it is that she's looking to provide. And despite being down 1,200 gold, still looking like it does a lot of damage overall.
It is. I mean, I've been very interested looking at a lot of the API-mization in general over the last, you know, 2 patches now since it was changed. Obviously, Purobel has had the brunt of the popularity, but I think, you know, a big part of the reason why we've been seeing, you know, specifically Chovy has been the one that's driving this Nash's Rylai's build. Just the Nash's being that little bit cheaper, right? And I don't know what the overall stat efficiency was pushed to with its changes, but I'm going to assume good overall.
Yeah.
And then the Rylai's being 2.6 or 2.7k gold. It just makes those first 2 items so easy to get to so frequently. In contrast, Xiaohu having the Horizon Focus actually been one of the more critiqued item changes of that patch of 2510. Personally, I think on the LeBlanc it's probably okay, right? Just because the flat AP is so high that you know, you're happy to kind of get it on the spike. But then I guess the question would be, you know, what about just going Death Cap there? Like, just as an example, just as the static item that it is, or even Shadow Flame, right? Same AP, but getting the air quotes crit on the lower HP targets. Is it just more valuable, right? So that's always going to be the question, those effects and such stacked up against one another. But being at 100 and, was it 15 AP off the top of my head for that Horizon Focus, and of course everything else it does, feels very good.
Well, we found ourselves once again, Jamada, having to discuss items because the teams are just not doing a lot. We've been at this sort of stalemate for the last 5 minutes or so. The Atacon didn't inspire any fighting. The Last Dragon didn't particularly inspire any fighting. And for Weibo, their time, it feels like, is slightly running out for me. I mean, they've still got that chance on a side lane with the Nidalee, with the LeBlanc, but the time for this misfortune to really come alive certainly feels like it's been and gone. And now missing, Santi wants to try to take a fight. Tian forced to flash out to safety, and Peyz' culling will not quite connect. But it's a small advantage, a small win for JDG. And on that 26-minute marker, the Baron is live, and just a quick little nod to it with the pink ward going down.
Quick little hello and turn around. Do not start this Baron. I mean, I'm going to be honest. As we are doing a 2-man, like, this is for clarity, a 2-man color cast. Though I have to credit your play-by-play, though you've not really had to do much of it this game.
No, it's been pretty chill.
Weibo, JDG, do the fighting thing, man. Like, I'm starting to lose my marbles here a bit. I'm on very limited sleep over the last 2 days, but especially today. Like I said, fluid got boss off the cast to ensure that she can rest and do, you know, boss things.
You know, it's a bad
Chelsea.
situation when the boss is having to do the legwork, you know?
Yes,
That's we were all in
exactly.
trouble for this, so it was important that we pulled in Jamada for this one.
But man, they've got to do something to keep me awake right now, is how I'm feeling, because 4 kills, 27 minutes, especially after last game, right? And the chaos of how that unfolded. Perhaps a bit of a humbling game for both sides, frankly.
True.
There's
no world where Weibo Weibo are happy that they won that game, don't get me wrong, but there's no way they come away from it going, it was optimal to give Zeri 8 kills in 12 minutes. That was the intention.
It's one of those ones where, like, you know when they talk about coaches having the belt? Where it's like, I can imagine Weibo head coach, like, standing just barely off frame, just, like, smacking the belt in his hands and just nodding to the Weibo players as they walk backstage, like, just acknowledging that there will be punishment despite the result.
Yes.
And frankly, as an ex-coach very long time ago now, been there. You know, there are just games like that happen, and that was certainly one for Weibo. Where,
so you remember when I told you to do this, and we focused the Zeri, and then you didn't do any of that for the first 25 minutes?
Yeah. Jamada just wants to watch LR win NLC. No, I don't, bro. That region is a one-team region. Like, it's going to be done. They're going to be done before we are.
Yeah. And maybe JDG are looking to make that happen a little bit sooner as the engage comes through from missing, but once again, it's a solar flare onto a Skarner who has still got 4,000 HP to go, but that looks a little more convincing. Xiaohu flashes and dashes into the backline to find nothing. Air has low, won't go down, missing once again. Goes forward and finally falls. The first kill goes to Weibo, but JDG are cleaning up. Breathe the next to fall. Xiaohu's got to distort out to safety, and Light's flash might just be 1 second just too late. And JDG find the fight, find the kills, and now they can turn tail, head toward the Baron.
Yeah, head towards the Baron for sure. Xiaohu chunks out Shun. Is he going to find a bit more than that?
Steadfast presence.
He's got him.
Solo kill him. Who's the assassin here, Jamada? Jun or Xiaohu?
I mean, it's the Poppy with the Sundered Sky, of course. Like, come on now. It is what it is. Like,
you know, I forgot. 2-item Poppy versus 3-item LeBlanc. Yeah, that makes sense.
Hey, look, you know how League of Legends game design is and how it's critiqued. You know what? I'm not even going to open that can of worms. I think most people are wrong. Yeah, starts off with this kind of half-ish engage for both teams for a little while here. It wasn't until Bree stepped a little bit too far forward that the commit really comes in. And Xiaohu does his best to pressure the backline. Tian finds the impale, but it's only really onto missing. And whilst that front line portion is good to connect onto, the way that he puts his body forward enables JDG to kind of just go on this rampage through the rest of the team. That Weibo unfortunately no longer had a considerable front line to deal with, and then this is where things get funky. Xiaohu sees, you know, a 1.4k no magic resist target, but the steadfast presence reaction time is there. He can't dash back, so the second part of the Q connects, and the buckler auto was buffered before the distortion comes through on the return for Xiaohu. And now, as we come out of the replay, JDG is sieging onto the bottom side of tier 2.
And now with the Baron, the game you'd like to think will open up, and hold on a second, Jun's just caught Xiaohu and taken him once again. I mean, about half HP from that LeBlanc is, again, very threatening. Her dashing forward now makes it much more difficult, and you know, if Peyz just gets a couple quick autos, maybe that's going to be enough, as Weibo lurking here on this bot side, still attempting to defend this tier 2, but Peyz already took the tier 2 in the mid lane. He pivots down to the bot side, and they find that without any real pressure either. And a slam into the wall onto Tian, who does just get melted. The culling to finish off the job, and Arla's auto will finish the deal as Jun also very low. Bullet time Magnet Storm combo looks good, but Scout eviscerates Light in the backline. And Breathe now is the next target. Xiaohu's dashing away. Breathe is out, and 1 HP left for Xiaohu as they take the bot side and seem to be taking this game by storm.
Yeah, and you can see why Rylai's is such a frustrating item on Azir to deal with. I know there's a lot of discussion amongst not just Azir players, but you know, pundits in general about the itemization overall. We mentioned it earlier, obviously, the AP itemization, where it's, hey, you know, if Azir goes this combination of items, does he really deal a lot of damage? And honestly, I feel like a lot of the trade-offs seem to always end up being pretty good. I do believe that Rylai's is still contextually one of those items where, like, it's more useful in some games than others. And this is perhaps one of those games where it is kind of annoying to walk away from a Rylai's Azir. Yeah, a bit of an example here. It's like you start getting auto'd here as Breathe, and it's like you just take 4 more autos more than you likely would have if that was just the Leandries, right? Like flat out. And, the damage is still pretty comparable auto to auto. But if you get 4 more autos in because of the Rylai's, then yeah, it's it's a bit of a no-brainer.
And for Scout, we criticised him and his little flash play around mid lane, but since then, albeit not too many fights have happened, but the ones that have, he's been pretty darn efficient in finding the backline or finding damage, and in both instances he's kept his life still going and managed to put himself in a pretty good position to keep his team going. Peyz, for what it's worth on this Lucian, has been a little bit quieter in this game, not to his own detriment, but just hasn't had that insane pop-off that we have come to see from him. Without the Baron, that tier 2 turret going to be a little more difficult to try to take down, but it won't stop JDG with the inhibitor down on that bot side already taken. Their attention's focused up to that top side.
Want that tier 2, last one standing on the map. Of additional gold too, and whilst it's not necessarily the most gold in the world at this point in the game, in terms of just pressure, it'll be good as well. Goodbye for the time being, Xiaohu. But
that was Solar Flare as well.
Yeah, it was Solar Flare, but we won't talk about it. Oh, hello, actually, Shun might be in a bit of trouble. Impale.
Flash from Tian here, gets out of that dangerous position, but it's already 1. That's going to be 2, and despite the bullet time reigning over missing, Peyz has dashed in. He's taken down 1, and the rest of the team will follow up to keep him alive. 5-0, JDG take game 3.
Not quite 5-0. Xiaohu squeaked out somehow.
Oh,
which is
well, he should have died.
Big surprise. But he should have died, I agree. And even with him being on the map, I don't think he's going to be able to do too much here. Steadfast presence, goodbye.
And it's JDG that bounced back their blue side game right back on top, and with a game number 3 rounded out quite nicely, which was honestly a little bit of a snoozer for the first 20-25 minutes, and as soon as JDG found that fight, they never really stopped.
Oh, wipe my eyes. Look, I was getting real EP.
Yeah.
Our producer probably saw me doze off a few times that game. Not much to say. It was just really slow and, dare I say, methodical, because it felt like they were staring at each other for a little while, you know? Like, there wasn't really a method to the madness, nor was there madness. So what do you call a game like that, you know? At the end of the day, JDG able to prevent, some of the core win conditions, I think, crucially, from really taking over the map. The Nidalee felt like, despite the almost 2,000 gold lead at a point, really didn't have the impact that you would like to see it have in that 1v1, whether it was the lane assignments or just the overall way that, the kind of flow of the game ended up being, where teams kind of rotated towards objectives, but then stared at each other very gently before one team took an objective and walked off. Yeah, something different had to be changed there, and Xiaohu, the LeBlanc pick, it's not the first time that we've seen it come out in recent history, and Xiaohu have either a stinker or like a good game, but then not really find the finishing touches on a game, which I feel like is always the problem now with modern day LeBlanc games. Unless she is snowballed out the wazoo, it feels so hard to be useful on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I mean, the Poppy answer as well, we saw it just a couple of times, but always at proper times, where Jun, he's finding that 1v1 versus the LeBlanc. If that goes a different way, maybe they don't lose Baron, and maybe that's enough to keep Weibo in that game. But it's Jun actually coming out on top in that little exchange and chunking out Xiaohu when they're sieging a bot lane tier 2 that gives them the benefit and gives them that way into finding more advantages. And for Weibo as well, their entire composition, you draft Misfortune to have this strong early and mid game, but it's answered by Illusion, which did its exact job and sort of muted the Misfortune for the most part. And then you've got 2 side laners who never really got off to the races. And, for Weibo, if you don't get that early game advantage, we'd sort of talked about how JDG probably just outscale and at the end of the game, it was just having a slightly better team comp overall and having just more agency into the late game is what netted them that win.
That's the main thing, I think, right now, is just the way that these games have gone. It feels like agency, for like easy agency into the later stages of games has really been the trend, right? Or at least for game 2 and this game here, game 1 was its own little microcosm of a thing.
Yeah.
As here is your PGB. The gold graph is, yeah, again, we didn't really do much, guys.
Weibo seemingly had a gold lead for a significant portion of this game, but between them just giving over Atacon completely uncontested and the lack of that side lane that we'd sort of talked about and touched on being their win condition was, you know, they just kind of missed everything. They didn't do a lot and they got punished for it.
Yeah, there's not really much else to say. It's always a bit of a bizarre moment when you get games like that where it didn't even feel like Weibo were gassed, you know, in the sense of out of like ideas or plays. They just weren't really making them, right? It was JDG really squeezing in and punishing positioning errors from Weibo, especially as the game went on. That was just a reoccurring theme. And yeah, again, we didn't really see too much side lane action. This was about as close as we got, right, to like straight up 1-3-1ing.
Yeah, literally.
Xiaohu, so the kill was pretty sweet.
And you know, there are instances where maybe fights could have been played that little bit better. I think this is that instance you were talking about where Tian probably could have called for his own Impale a lot sooner than he did, but doesn't end up pulling that many people forward or, you know, making the big play that we needed. And, you know, with Scout here, yeah,
turn it off. We've seen enough. We've seen enough. We've seen enough. Full screen us.
There were instances where there were slight issues for JDG.
Yeah.
However, the good thing is that they managed to bounce back from them, and Weibo, again, to hammer home the point for maybe the third or fourth time, didn't ever punish anything from JDG that probably ought to have been.
Yeah, and this is one of those like weird like games out of Weibo where it almost makes you wonder why they're here, you know, because that's one of those kind of games, not to be too harsh here, but you think, okay, well, where's the Weibo that, you know, loves to just skirmish pretty much non-stop for 15 minutes just because they can, through TN, through the solo lanes, whatever it may be. Where's our smart macro team, right? Like, okay, if there's not going to be champion-to-champion interaction, at least you would expect good lane assignments, good pressure onto side lane towers. It just felt, yeah, very limp by the end of it from Weibo, and hopefully they can turn things around to, you know, give us a competitive remainder of the series.
And it's interesting as well, because for coming into this, the two times we were saying that, or the two games that we've given Weibo their comp that we theoretically think they might have a chance on, the two times that they've lost, and when they've tried to go blow for blow with JDG and actually look at those 5v5 team fights, it's the game that they won, it's the one that they came out on top of. But you know, the side laning, the split pushing that we sort of theorized that this team comp really, or this team of players really enjoys performing with and has done so far in the regular season, it's not working for them, and they get to go back to blue side on game 4, and hopefully they can reset themselves and give themselves a better 5th game, or better 4th game even, but maybe a return back to what worked in game number 2, where they just go try and, you know, pound for pound check stat check the tanks as well, on, you know, JDG side also.
Yeah, this is where things always get a little bit like messy, right? As Shun is actually going to end up being the one that collects the MVP. I don't hate this vote. This feels like a very subtle, cool vote.
Number 13 for him in the season.
Number 13, a little bit of an unlucky number, but a very fortunate game was played for him. Where when it comes to the fearless draft side of things, like, stuff gets really...
We're going to take a quick break. Jamada's going to rest up, and after this short break, we are going to see if JDG can round out this series, send Jamada to bed, or if we're going the full distance to game number 5. Don't go anywhere, folks.